Hello there, Alan Plum here again with a little more from Shed Engineering. Right, I managed to get a lot of the chicken wire tied down to the supports, but we've got a problem at this far end. I wanted to continue with the wire netting and try and get this lift out section of scenery something like so that it felt as if I was making some kind of progress. But I was talking about modelling the inside of the tunnel. Well, I can't fit the inside of the tunnel to this lift out section. I think it's going to be too delicate, etc, etc. So I think what I've got to do, I've got to model the inside of the tunnel as a separate item so that that can be fitted in place and hopefully left, barring sort of derailments. And then this lift out section of the scenery, this 5'6" length, can then just sit over the top, and then if I need to move it for access to the fiddle yard, I can do without disturbing the fit of the tunnel. So I've really got to start construction on the tunnel before I can carry on with the hills. Right, unfortunately I've got far too much footage and need to try and edit it down and for it to still make sense. So here goes. First of all, I took a template of the turning circle, transferred that onto this piece of plywood, and then using some Foamelux plastic I've nailed that around to make a former representing the two walls of the tunnel. I actually wanted a slightly smaller scale stone than this, but this is the best I could come up with. So using this self-adhesive stone paper, I cut lots of strips the height of the tunnel wall. To get the long length I need for the tunnel, I'm using wallpaper lining. The self-adhesive stone paper was stuck down to that, making sure it was absolutely straight until I'd got a long enough length for the tunnel wall. That was then cut out, leaving something like 3/8 of an inch either side, from which I could make the tabs that can be then folded over. And here you can see that I've created the tabs along one edge of the stone paper, folded them back and wrapped it right around the former and just held it in position with some sellotape. Then using the same lining paper I cut some long strips the height of the tunnel wall and glued them all the way around to start giving some added strength. Oh, Paddy, Daddy's making a tunnel. I'm trying to make a tunnel. Yes, I am. I'm making a tunnel. No, I'm not making a dog kennel. No. Go away. Go away, you silly thing. Go on. Off you go. Go find them pussycats. Off she goes. I think the first strip I put on was probably plain, but then I cut tabs on the edge. This was the quickest way, by using a Stanley knife and straight edge to form all the tabs. I took some of the curl out of the paper and then proceeded to fold all the tabs over, ready for gluing. Right, we've had to relocate into the lounge and we've created a bit of a work area out of a couple of shelves laid across the layout. I have had to redo the former I had the nails on the inside of the radius, and I've had to put them on the outside. It was just easier to do it that way. So after putting the stone paper on first, facing innermost to create the tunnel wall, I then obviously just used strip after strip with the tabs cut, first putting one on facing down and then the next layer with the tabs facing up. To do both at the same time was very fiddly, they kept getting in the way, but that gradually built up the strength, and after 5 or 6 layers, as you can see, we've got something that is fairly rigid, which is hopefully going to keep the tunnel walls something like vertical and give it some strength. To create the inner tunnel wall, I found it easier to put a piece of lining paper down first, and then the stone paper obviously facing inwards. Cut some tabs on the bottom of that, and I was able to glue that to the lining paper, which I could then cut away later. And then, as before, using strips of lining paper with a fringe cut on the bottom, I was able to glue that in position, one facing down and then one facing up, gradually building up the thickness, which would obviously give it the strength which you can see here. 1 or 2 spots of glue here and there, but I'm not really bothered about that. The tunnel is going to be water stained, sooty and grimy. The main thing is trying to create the strength. So that actually gave us the 2 vertical walls. I think most tunnels had vertical side walls because the arched roof obviously took the weight and spread it across onto the side walls and vertically down. But let's check that out on a few photographs and have a look at Haddon Tunnel as well. General profile of railway tunnels. But as a general rule of thumb, it looks as if double track tunnels always had straight sides, or normally had straight sides. Again, you've got a reasonably straight side on that one. Again, another one with a straight side. There we have the south portal of Haddon Tunnel, and there we have the north portal of Haddon Tunnel, and that's actually where I'm modelling from. And as you can see, it's got straight sides and it's quite a shallow curve over the top, and also just here and here you've got the drains that went down the track. There's an old photograph of Haddon Tunnel. Haddon Tunnel is just in the background there, and this train has just come out and is climbing up, and you can see how the embankment is quite high on the left hand side, and again that's what I'm trying to model. And there's another photo of a loco coming up out of Haddon Tunnel, just approaching the signal box. So let's have a quick look inside Haddon Tunnel. There we are inside with one of the ventilator shafts. There we are looking up the ventilator. That's one of the drains that runs down the centre of the track. That's what I fell into the first time I went into Haddon Tunnel. You can see that in my railway walk video. but they were used to be covered with like a timber manhole cover just made up with planks. That's showing a couple of the recesses. Why they were different shapes I don't quite know, but and notice how huge the stone blocks are. Another picture showing one of the recesses, and obviously in places they used brick as well as stone, and in a lot of places it's almost like stalagmite and stalactites with where the water has actually run in over the years. There we have another ventilator, and further down the ventilator is actually the full width of the tunnel. The only reason the tunnel was built was to keep the railway line out of sight of the Duke, and this actually shows just how shallow the tunnel was. At its very deepest it was 12 foot deep, and it was a cut and cover method of construction. Here we are where the tunnel sort of starts and stops again. This is just a ventilator that's the full width of the tunnel. And you can clearly see the profile of the tunnel and the straight walls. And that's quite a nice shot showing another recess and another ventilator further down towards the north end of the tunnel. So how on earth are we going to create a curved round tunnel roof? As far as I know, there's no how-to videos on YouTube giving an explanation, and the only solution I've been able to come up with so far is to use lots of narrow strips of card. I think if you tried using a cardboard tube, you're going to end up with something that looks like the old threepenny bit or a 50p piece. So I'm hoping with lots of strips of card like this overlapping, we should get some rigidity and strength, and to keep the shape consistent, if we have a former, then we can obviously lay the strips of card over and probably use something like Evo stick as a contact adhesive so it sticks immediately, and then you can slide the former along and keep sticking the strips of card over the top. And that seemed like a pretty good plan to start off with. You've got the former to hold the walls in position. You could put the roof former in and then create the roof, and everything would be kept in shape and in position. But that plan suddenly fell apart when I realized that I couldn't get the walls in position because the flange that I'd created around the walls wouldn't allow me to get it close enough to the backboard. As you can see here, as I put it in position, I've had to cut the flange away both top and bottom, which makes the tunnel wall very floppy, so it's no longer going to keep its shape. And it's the same at the end of the turning circle. When I laid the track, I'd never thought about modelling the tunnel, and so I've had to cut away the flange there as well, again weakening and taking the actual shape out of the tunnel walls. and that's why we had to resort to building the tunnel roof in situ rather than doing it on the former, which would have been a lot better. But I was able to tape the walls down to stop them moving around. I was able to tape them to the baseboard to make sure they wasn't too close or too far away from the actual track. This is just showing you the recesses, simple enough to create by cutting the tunnel walls and folding them back a little bit like doors, which gives the side walls, and then just putting a piece of card along the back, and then I created the round top for the recesses with some brick paper. Here I'm just sticking the card onto the self-adhesive stone paper to create all the strips for the roof. This is the roof former. I've used a roll of sandpaper, which was an ideal length, and I've squashed it down and wrapped some electrical tape round to lessen the profile of the roof, so the profile is a lot shallower. It's also a little bit longer than a coach, so providing the former fits nicely between the walls, then the coaches that are passing through shouldn't have a problem. There should be enough clearance, obviously. So it's just a matter of gluing each piece of card from the back wall over the top and onto the front wall. And once you get a little production line going, cutting and preparing pieces of card while the contact adhesive on other strips are actually drying, you can make quite rapid progress. Made a bit of a boob here. I never marked where the lift out scenery was coming to, and so I've modelled 2 or 3 inches of tunnel unnecessarily. So we've cut the tunnel back a few inches so it doesn't interfere with the lift out section of scenery here, and then over in the back corner I've extended it across so that the lift out section will actually sit across the top of the tunnel, and obviously that's why I had to really model the tunnel first. My intention was to do this in papier-mâché, and here you can see I've made a start by threading card through the chicken wire to provide a base, but in actual fact the time it was taking on bended knees and bent over like that, it was just a mammoth task, plus the fact I want this very stiff, so it needed a lot of layers, and the drying time was just totally impracticable. So I did that one section, but after that I'm afraid I chickened out and decided to go with fiberglass because it was obviously much quicker. Perhaps not what you was expecting, because in the last clip I was starting the papier-mâché, but to be perfectly honest, bent over on my knees trying to do the papier-mâché, I wanted it so stiff and rigid that it was just taking so long. So in actual fact I'd only done one section just here, and the drying time as well, I decided to go with fiberglass, and so this is just a couple of layers of fiberglass laid over the top of the wire mesh. little bit of reinforcing in places to join it onto the upright supports, but as you can see, it's made a good solid job. And the main thing about it is its rigidity. You know, it's not floppy whatsoever. Now, whether I can get it onto hinges, perhaps, I've still got to see, but at least that gives me some access. As I've said before, I've got to cut some of the backboard away, and once it's on legs I might actually have enough room, but that's still to be seen. So that's a major step forward. That's a major step across the layout. Up at this far end, you can obviously now see why I had to model the tunnel first and put that in place, and then the lift out scenery is skirting over the top of that. I shall then probably cover that tunnel section in foam and make a foam section that is fastened to the tunnel but not to the sides or the baseboard, and then that can lift out should there be a derailment in the actual tunnel. So yes, we're starting to make some progress that looks something. Right, we've given it a coat of brown emulsion to get rid of that horrible orange colour, but you can see here how the fiberglass has sunk into the hollows between the chicken wire, and so for a start off I'm going to go over it with some filler, also trying to disguise some of the joins between the fiberglass matting. Perhaps the tunnel wasn't that important with me not having a cam truck at the moment, but you never know, it might add some interest in the future, and it's something that some people might like to bear in mind if they're in the planning stage. As for the 5-foot lump of hillside, well, at least it gives me access to the fiddle yard, and you never know, if I can get it on hinges, then that'll be a bonus. The fiberglass was a bit expensive, I must admit. It would have added up to £45–50, but when you consider the strength and stiffness, I'm wondering whether I should have done the first section in fiberglass instead of foam. And again, if you're in the planning stage, what I'm hoping is that it might open up new untried options, because on a much bigger layout I'm almost positive you could easily span 2 foot or more of storage sidings with next to no timber supports at all, fouling the track, etc. If I had actually realised the strength, I could have honestly just screwed up some old newspapers, piled them up into the shape of the hills, and then gone over that with some glass fibre, and then just pulled all the newspaper out after it had dried, because honestly it's got so much strength and stiffness that I could have done without all them supports and chicken wire. Anyway, I hope you found something of interest. No doubt some of you will be coming up with better ideas of creating a curved tunnel roof than what I've managed to do. By all means leave a comment or leave feedback. Lots of viewers read the comments, so it's a way of giving your own input and ideas so that other people can see them. Thank you also to all the new subscribers. That's very much appreciated. And remember, if you do subscribe and want the updates, you have to click on the little cogwheel outside of the subscribe banner. A lot of people don't know that yet. And as always, many thanks for watching.